Paul, can you talk to us a little bit about your recovery and the stages and that you went through, whether it was therapy or whatever, to really help people understand how you get to a healthy place again?
Sure. I think it's a process is the first thing I would say, a little bit of trial and error. But I was very depressed in college, and upon my mom's encouragement, I ended up going to see a therapist. And right away, the therapist was like, just disclosing little bits, because at that point I had not disclosed much. My parents knew a little bit, friends knew a little bit. And so telling the therapist pieces of things was like right away. And one of the first questions was, is this person still in a daycare? And the answer was yes, to my knowledge. And so they believed right away that they needed to report and that I needed to file a report. And that was probably, I mean, it feels less weighty now, but I share this because I think I want people to hear it. It was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life, and probably still one of the hardest things, because you talk to a stranger and you have to, tell them your story. And I hadn't told family members or very dear friends the real full story. And so I disclosed. Because of statute of limitations in California, nothing could really be done. And so they told me if somebody comes forward in years from now, then they could call my testimony or like call that forward. And so I essentially forgot about it and moved on. I kept doing the work, therapy. I have taken anger management and meditation and many different things over the years, depending on what was necessary in my life at that time. But therapy has been a consistent. I have found it very rewarding to be able to talk and get a lot out and process a lot of information, and I feel very differently than when I started. The love thing is a great reference to that, because I would have said without any hesitancy that I did love her at the beginning of the journey, and now there's no hesitancy. So I then moved on, as I said, kind of started going on with my life, and an investigator called me. Somebody currently in the daycare had reported, and they were following up on my original report that at the time was 15 years prior.
Wow.
So she had continued to have a daycare, continued to have children there. And thankfully, the good part of the story, the silver lining, is that there was a hearing held to determine if she would lose her license as a state-sanctioned daycare provider. At that hearing, there were different witnesses, all children at the time who are now adults, who testified against her. And then the defense, her team did have parents and like character people that would comment, but no children, nobody who had ever been in her care. And so the judge ruled that she should absolutely lose her license, and not only that, she should not be able to be around susceptible populations, including elderly or animals, which was very vindicating for me. It's such a long process, and even though I had people like Karis who were so supportive, there is a vindication to know, like, okay, it's true. People believe me. I think that's part of what you search for, is just that people believe you. And so that was very vindicating to have that happen. My stepfather came into the environment not being indoctrined, had no reference, and he right away would go into the daycare and think things were off because all the kids were quiet and they were all like staring at the door waiting for a parent to walk through, and he thought that was weird. I think largely because he was like, these are kids, why are they not like yelling and running around? And based on that, my mother sat me and my brother down. We were very young, probably 5, 6, and kind of checked in and asked us. And I remember distinctly lying and saying it was fine, because it doesn't have to be rational, but I feared for their lives. I feared that something would happen to them if the abuser found out. And so you hold that secret, and to this day I can so distinctly remember being like, I'm gonna lie, like I'm gonna tell for them, to protect them, because it's not tangible. It's just a feeling, and you just know you can't cross that line.
Right, and if the abuser is capable of abusing you and it feels awful, then in a child's mind, of course, they're going to be capable of doing that to the parents, and you've got to protect your parents. And also, if you don't protect your parents, then where do you end up? It's interesting. Your stepfather picked up on that maybe the other parents didn't because they were too close to the situation.
And still, we said nothing was wrong. That's
Right.
something that is important too, is it isn't so clear cut. Well, I asked, as you referenced.
Right.
Well, I asked, and they said it was fine. It's like, yeah.
Right. Your journey is the therapy and being able to make the report, and then we finally see that she pays some consequences, but it's just that she lost her ability to run a daycare. There were no criminal charges that were ever brought up, and was that because of the statute of limitations?
Yeah, it was the statute of limitations at the time. I know that the laws have been changed now, but they're complicated. And the simple answer is, how would I prove that what happened to me decades ago at this point, how would I prove that beyond my
Right.
word? And so one nice tidbit that came from the hearing was that the judge really commented on the fact that all of the children, who were children at the time, who testified were thematically very similar.
Right.
And there was no deviating. We all said kind of the same story. None of us, had interacted with each other. So that was very important. I think for closures, I got to hear people say things that I knew were true, but then to hear them in their words, a little bit different, a little bit of a different experience, was really powerful, but cathartic for me ultimately. I think it's a very personal journey, which we've talked about a lot. I think the film could be triggering for people. We're very conscious of that. It's one of the reasons that we wanted to do this. But also it's a very personal journey, and for some people, I say that you never move on from it. You heal,
Right.
you navigate the world with this new information, but you absolutely can accept, move forward, be a positive influence on others, engage the world in a healthy way. And that would be my story, is that it was a lot of ups and downs. And,
Right.
rare people are aware of all that, like Karis, who got to see that progression and like the challenges of dealing with and coping with certain things and certain sticking points that tend to happen. But you can heal.
heal.
You can be a happy person. You can be a contributing member of society. It is not all doom and gloom.
Right. Your story and your process and the way you tell it, so honestly, just does give a lot of hope to people out there.